The FlawedCast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the FlawedCast. I'm here today with my good friend Danny Fong. Danny has asked that I introduce him by the way in which I feel about him, which is it's an interesting intro. So I'll be giving Danny's background as to who he is to me and the way that he's impacted my life. Danny is an amazing individual that I had the pleasure of meeting a decade ago, if you can believe it. It seems like just yesterday, and yet here we are now. And you know, our interaction at that point was, I think I met you in a stairwell singing a cappella with a group of fine people who, you know, I had the pleasure of knowing for quite a few years after. It was my first introduction to the wonders of vocal music. So thank you for that. But I will say that to me, Danny is an amazingly accepting person who has gone through, I would say, actually a noticeable change in life. Like, you're still Danny, for sure, but you're not the Danny that I knew 10 years ago. Neither do I expect myself to be the Jay that you knew 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's one of those things where the things that I appreciate about you most is that you're you're very accepting, you're a very good listener, and you're not afraid to have like difficult conversations with people and sort of challenge the thought process, but you're not dismissive of that. It's you're willing and open to learn about other people's experiences and share your own, which I think is great because there's like a mutual shared knowledge thing. And I'm hoping that today we can share some of that openness with the viewers or the listeners and give them a little bit of perspective, because you've actually undergone quite a transformation in the last 10 years since I've known you. So I miss anything there?
I think that's great. Thanks. That was really nice of you.
You are welcome. It's my pleasure. I've been trying to get you to do an episode of the show, and I think that this is possibly the best episode of the podcast that I could have you on. So today we're going to be talking about relationships, our relationships with other people, whether they be friends, family, people who are close to us, or those like close, like intimate relationships that we have with other people and have us like, ooh. Oh yeah. I'll have to like clear the cobwebs out of my brain on what those were like. But that's going to be the insight today. So I was wondering if perhaps like you could share some experience that you might have had with the people listening in terms of like what your experience was in terms of where you sort of came from and the difficulties that you found yourself having, and the experience you went through to sort of like change how you were interacting with other people to become this sort of more open and inviting person that you are now, which I believe to be true.
Okay. It's like, there's so much there and where to start. Let's talk about...
Yeah, it's very broad.
So the first thing I'll talk about is there's this book called The Enneagram, Enneagram. And the Enneagram, well, basically, several years ago, I was... the way that I was as a person was very much like high energy all the time. It was kind of like when I walk into the room, the party starts kind of thing. And I say that
high energy.
I was very high. I say that in a negative way, like not like, look how cool I am. Like, I think it was a bad thing. What else about myself? I was a neurotic planner, meaning that one of the things was like I was totally unable to sit with negativity, especially like my own internal negativity. So I was always doing fun activities. Like we met playing dodgeball and basically like any sport, like we went paintballing and stuff before, like any sport or
Smash
anything
Brothers.
that I could do. Smash Brothers.
A lot of Smash Brothers to you.
Yeah.
The very few times that I won, which when I say won, I mean like managed to kill you once. that was immediately met with harsh repercussions for me for having, obviously, how dare I?
Yeah. Anyway, I was
Fond
like
memories.
a chronic planner in the fact that because I was so unable to cope with this negativity, I was
Hmm.
planning fun things to do so I could always be staying emotionally high. So
Hmm.
one of the things that the reason why I mentioned the Enneagram was because this is the book that I came across that there was a period in my life where I was like, I feel like I should be reading more, but
Mm.
I don't know what I want to be reading and I don't know where to start. So one day, like a friend of mine invited me. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to the bookstore. Do you want to come with me?" And I like immediately I was like, "Well, I don't know. Like I don't know what books I'd buy." But she said, "I'm interested in enneagrams," and I just said like, "I don't know what that is,
Hmm.
but anything that I can do with someone else means I don't have to spend time with myself and my negativity or whatever." I didn't even
Yeah,
know I was
absolutely.
negative or I had any negativity deep down, but anyway, I went with her and I read the back of this book, and when I read it, I was just like, this is the book that I'm supposed to find right now. Like if I was if I like if there is a god or something, this was like God's plan for me to find this book. It was like basically the this is basically like a guide to spiritual enlightenment, but not
Hmm.
through like any kind of religion or anything like that. Um,
Yeah, I remember you showing me the book. Actually, you got me to do the Enneagram test, and it was very enlightening. Let's put it that way. It very much revealed some like deep personal truths I felt about myself, and I was like, ooh, hard to argue with this.
yeah. So anyway, those I read about my number, which I was a 7 on the Enneagram, and sevens are chronically over planning and trying to
Mhm,
stay happy, life of the party kinds of guys or girls. And
mhm.
and
People.
what was people, thank you. Um, and what was really interesting about this book was it's not just like there's different personality typing things like Myers-Briggs or that are
Yeah,
like, oh, you're outgoing and extroverted and but
yeah,
you're an introverted emotional person or something like that. And
that's very Myers Briggs.
yeah, and the Enneagram was different because firstly it was like the reason why or it was talking about like the behaviors that we develop as a way
Hmm.
to guarantee ourselves love.
Yeah.
And so like my positivity seeking was because like I never I never had any like really negative experiences growing up, which is really lucky for me, I guess.
Hmm.
But I never uh what am I trying to say here? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I remember my experience with the Enneagram was like, again, it identified sort of the hard points for me, which were, the things were like, you're a very, I think the way it came out in the end was like like the tragic kind of lover kind of
Yeah,
person
that
where
was your
it's
type.
like, yeah, it's like you're constantly seeking like love and affirmation from other people, but you almost prefer it to be going badly because you can feel like a deeper emotional state or something by engaging in like the negative sides of relationship and like the loss, and like you just want you put yourselves in this situation where you're in mourning or feeling loss, and I'm just like, oh my god, like help.
Yeah,
Like
and because you
it's
feel like
true
you have
though.
like this deep sadness that no one else
Yeah.
understands.
And I'm like, that's awful. It's really awful. But I'm like, it's so true because like the amount of time in my life that I spent like going through like relationships, like whether they be with like family or friends or whatever, like I've always like ended up mentally placing myself as this like loner who just like can't get along or can't find other people that are like him, and like it just wasn't meant to be or work out, or I had to like sacrifice my happiness so that they could succeed, and it's just very melodramatic and awful.
Mm.
But like, I think there's something to be said about like, now knowing that, right? Like it really kind of gives you some perspective on the things that you're prone to.
Yeah, and I think that's why I found it so interesting, was because it wasn't just like saying this is who you are, because it was like type 7s, for example, come in of like a million different shapes and colors, and just like
Hmm.
the color blue can have like an infinite different number of shades. That's like
Yeah.
the same as 7s. But the thing that it was telling me in this book was like these are patterns that 7s follow, and
Yeah.
these are the negative consequences that you're going to come across in life when this keeps happening. And I like was as I was reading through this book, I was just like examining my whole life through the lens of this of these different traits. And like
Hmm.
just like you mentioned, like my stomach sunk to my feet, and I was just like, how does this book like know me so well? And
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It was brutal.
but that was like the catalyst for me being like, okay, like I like the first half of the book, or the first like the second half of the book is saying like these are all the types. The first half is like talking about spirituality and enlightenment and stuff like that. And like
Mhm.
if you like the goal and the purpose of these is to like recognize the ego within us. And the ego, like some people think of the ego just as like, oh, that guy has an ego, and
Mhm.
because he acts a certain way. But the ego is more than just like negative traits about something. It's like also what, like it's our fears, our defenses, the things we like, things we expect, our
Mhm.
opinions, our desires, and basically all the things that we think make us who we are.
Yeah.
It's also called like the compulsive or the defensive self. Um,
Mhm.
but the thing about that this book describes is like the thing about the ego is that it doesn't know that it's asleep. And a
Yeah.
lot of humans that we've met and we've been in relationships and ourselves until we started to realize this stuff was like we didn't realize that we were asleep to like a higher version of ourself that isn't um, enslaved basically by our unconscious behavior that is
Mhm.
designed to seek love.
Yeah. I
Um,
constantly find myself sort of challenging the ego, as we'll call it, because like for me, it's been pervasive in my life, and it's one of these things where it's funny because like I'll talk about like the benefits of positive self talk, and like what you say out loud is the kind of things that you put out into the world, and like by reinforcing those things over and over again, you make them come true. Like you do have a little bit of power over that. So the more you think positively, the more you're going to see positive results. The more you think negatively, the more you're going to see negative results. And I saw like a really cool thing. I think I talked about it with my friend Ryan on just like a football team. And like one of the things that they did to improve performance was just literally have them stop talking negatively. And they saw
mm,
like dramatic increases. But, one of the things that I find always challenging myself, and I've worked away most of the negative self-talk, but like there's this pervasive thought in my head that's like, you are going to die alone. like you are going to be alone. You're not you're not meant to find love, kind of thing. And you're just gonna, this life, the rest of it is gonna be you on your own, and you're just gonna have to come to terms with that. And that's like finding a partner, that's like family kind of thing. I have an incredibly difficult time connecting with my family, and I don't know why. Like they're lovely people, and I've put a lot of work into trying to like connect with them, but it like stems from like my own self-belief that I just limit myself, saying like I can't do this.
well, it's interesting that you say that, like, well, that they're lovely people, because
Mhm.
I'm sure they are lovely people, but the the issues that you have and the reasons why you have this like this negative self-taught talk
Mhm.
come from the relationships that like the way that they raised you. And
Mhm.
like just because they're nice people doesn't mean that they know how to show love in the correct way.
Oh yeah, and like that's 100% true. And I have I will acknowledge that that I did have struggles like growing up, especially in a family situation where like your parents are divorced and there's like challenges and things there that they're struggling with and don't know how to necessarily deal with as like new
Absolutely.
parents, and who are also going through all these things for the first time. But like I didn't pick up a lot of like positive traits in the first 10 12 years of my life in regards to relationships specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Like many other good things were learned, but relationships, not necessarily the best examples were being set.
Yeah, me too.
Later on, that kind of became better, but it's still hard when that's like the foundation of what your understanding of like relationships with other people are. And that's like loving relationships, familial relationships, and even like having close friends and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, always been a struggle.
Yeah.
Always absolutely been a struggle.
And just like that thought of I've tried connecting with them and still, and just like feeling like it's you that's not doing a good enough job, which is related to the same idea of ending up being alone, which is just like the thought that I am not worthy of being loved. Like
Mm-hmm.
this relationship isn't working out because I'm not good enough to make it. But like you can recognize when you're talking to different people, like me, for example, I will talk to you and I can like look at you and just say, Jason, I care about you a lot. I love you
Mm-hmm.
as a person for who you are, and like not based on what you do or what you achieve or any of those other things that most
Mm-hmm.
people grow up. So it's tough with our parents because they've lived the way they have for so long, which is the way that they grew up as well, right? It's generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough because some parents are willing to continue growing, or to continue searching, and
Mm-hmm.
some aren't. And you just, like with my dad, for example, I love him very much. He's
Mm-hmm.
not a bad person, but he's
Mm-hmm.
also very set in his ways and he's not growing much. So I just like my relationship with him is very positive, but it's very minimal as well. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
like my mom is the exact opposite. Like her and I check in every week. We have like I have got like some flashcard board games that that inspire you to ask deep questions.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, "Do you want to like have a FaceTime next week and we can like talk about our souls basically about these?" And then my dad, it's like we'll check in every month. I'll call him on Father's Day, and
Yeah.
he
Well,
doesn't seem to like not like to be affected by that, right? He's like, yeah,
yeah.
this is fine. And my mom's like, I want to talk to you every week. I care about you so much. So
Yeah. I have a very interesting sort of dynamic with the two parents. So, for whatever reason, I find like my friends will vouch for like who have known me for my life, or anyone actually who has met my mother because she likes to visit. So many people will know her. Um, everyone's like, your mom is the nicest person ever. And like, when your mom jokes were a thing. I don't want to say they were cool because I don't think they ever really were, but when they were a
they were
thing.
cool.
My friends,
It
if
was
anyone
grade
made a your
12.
mom joke about me, like my friends would be like, no, you got to take that back, like inappropriate.
She is a
Like,
saint.
like Jay may be shit and you can make fun of him, but you don't make fun of his mom. It's like she's the nicest lady ever.
What do you think made her so nice, or why does everyone think she's so nice?
She's just genuinely interested in everyone and like what they're doing and wants to get to know them. And I think like she just pays a lot of attention to people. Like she's all like, she asks me about people that I know that she has met before that like maybe she hasn't spoken to in a while, and like check, oh, how's so and so that you work with, and how's this person. I'm like, I don't really know, I haven't talked to them in that long, but she's just one of those people that like just really genuinely wants to know people and is excited to meet them and learn new things about them, which is great. So but I like, strangely, my mother is the person that I have the hardest time talking to because she's very sensitive about things. Like when like she wants things to be good, and if they're going bad, she tends to like take that on herself. And mom, like, I love you if you're listening, because sometimes you do. But like, it makes it difficult because like I don't want to make my mom sad. So sometimes that can be limiting for conversation because, a lot of the important things that come up in life, oftentimes are a bit of a struggle. And, it can be hard when you're just like, no, I can just deal with this myself. Whereas like, controversial,
Controversially?
by comparison,
Oh, okay.
my father, I can talk to my father about just about anything. And that's because we don't get along necessarily all the time. Like we have a few things in common, but like we fight. Sometimes we fight very aggressively, like not like physically, but like we have differences of opinions, and like words are exchanged, and it can be like an ordeal. But like at the same time, I don't feel like I ever have to hold back with him. And I know that he can kind of take it, because we can come back to it and have those conversations later where it's like, okay, we literally just had like a Hiroshima level incident here, and now we're rebuilding, and that works. So it's strange because like, I actually relate more to my mother. Like lately we've been getting together on like she's retired now, so I'm getting her back into drawing, which is like a passion that we both share. So that's been nice, and she's very excited about that, and I love to see that. So we're sort of connecting more on that level. But yeah, my dad's always been the one easier to talk to, even though we like disagree on many many things. It's interesting. Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
That's
But,
okay.
family relationships, they can be complicated.
Okay, I want to go back to some ideas about the Enneagram, but not Enneagram specifically, just like in general.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
About like enlightenment and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah, that's important.
I feel like the goal of enlightenment, which a lot of people kind of like when they hear about that word, they're just like, oh yeah, like look at you, like so spiritual, so enlightened, whatever. Like I feel like some people might hear that word and be like, I don't understand it, so I don't like it. And I think one of the goals of enlightenment is recognizing all the ways in which our ego is controlling our behaviors. And because the ego controls our behaviors unconsciously, like, for example, let me think here for a sec. Like me, my habits of like trying to stay chronically high all the time with activities and stuff was because I had this like deep-seated fear of like really being vulnerable, and I was afraid of that. And that was 27 years of my life. And it wasn't like I didn't have any idea that I was seeking fun activities to hide from this. I was just like, oh, I love doing fun activities, so I'll just keep doing them. Why wouldn't I do the things I love all the time? But like I mentioned earlier, the ego also includes the things we like and the things we love. So the goal when you like reach enlightenment, not that you ever do reach it, but you try to attain closer to it, is to live in essence, is the word that is often used by lots of spiritual factions, I guess. And like if we think about ourselves when like the moment we're born into the world in essence, we're like purely ourself. We only know like our needs aren't being met, so we cry. And it's like through being raised by our parents and the society that we live in that our personality starts to develop as a way to be like, oh, like, you know what? There isn't always going to be a mom that's going to just feed me when I cry. And then when we learn that, people don't just cry all the time when something is wrong, we learn to like hold those feelings in, and then we develop these behavioral patterns that's like, okay, well, crying, I've learned, especially for men, I've learned that crying, especially around other people, is not okay because I'll get made fun of or something, and I'll be perceived as weak. But
whole fragile masculinity kind of thing.
It's a big thing. But this, our ego develops as we grow up in the form of in the form of behaviors to guarantee us love, which is the basic need. Love is the thing that we all need and we're all searching for. And I think this is what's especially important to bring this to our actual topic of conversation, for building stable and healthy friendships and loving relationships, because the core value of being and feeling loved by other people is what needs to be prioritized. And that's not always what happens. Like a lot of our relationships are based on, because like there's this this presentation that I like to share with other people, called "Why You Will Marry the Wrong Person." It's by a philosopher.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's really good. It's this philosopher named Alan de Botton from the UK, who
Mhm.
he has a YouTube page called The School of Life, and it's basic.
Okay.
Every video is just like trying to increase the emotional intelligence of the world.
Okay.
And some of the topics, like why you'll marry the wrong person, is not meant to be like you'll never find the right person. It's like these are the things inside ourselves that we need to like take a second look at. And I've
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of those videos because like emotional intelligence and like self betterment, self help, I find
Mhm.
really important. Like I've for the last few years
Yeah.
of my life, I've it's been the most important thing for me. It's like before I can be in relationships, before I can like really do the career that I know I want to be doing and stuff, I
Mhm.
need to like be the wholest version of myself so that I can connect most authentically.
I think more people should find it more important,
I
if I'm honest.
I mean, I think everyone should, but everyone like everyone has their own story, right? And
I think there's a lot of
hopefully
people.
hopefully
Oh, sorry.
people are able to find this at some point. Like some people
Yeah.
it's like they don't start seeking their most spiritual self until like they're middle-aged or something, or until
Mm.
they're and like I feel very lucky that I've been like compelled to search for this at such a young age, because
Yeah.
you can see so many people who are like that cranky old man or something, that like that, or the racist old man or something, that you're just
Yeah.
like, yep, that's a
Yeah.
thing.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like honestly, I think there's a huge thing in the world right now where, well, not right now, but forever, that hopefully we can challenge in the future. But, one thing that sort of always gets me is like expectations and people's willingness to like follow the expectations of other people. And I don't think they ever like really look into like what they want so much, because they're just sort of inundated with all these like familial expectations, cultural expectations, like societal expectations. And
Hmm.
they're just like, in their mind they've got like this list, and they're just ticking off boxes that say that at the end of the sheet, like if you've ticked off all these boxes, you have become a whole person and you are now living a life that you should be proud of. But like that list is different for everyone. And, it really like you can't even know what the items are until you've had some like self reflection
Totally.
in terms of like who you are.
Like that list is like a pretty good analogy for what seeking spiritual enlightenment is like
Hmm.
knowing that we have these lists, um that like the goal is to figure out what those lists are, I
Yeah.
guess.
And one of the things that I kind of wanted to touch on while we were here, because like for me, it was interesting because I had a time where it's like we hung out a lot, and then we interacted in a certain way, and then I left for a while, and then I came back and we reconnected, and I was very excited because like, oh, my good friend Danny. And then I was like, oh my God, this is like a whole new Danny. How did we get here? And then you actually introduced me to like the Enneagram and started talking to me about these things. But I was listening to your podcast, and you were talking about your experiences with like, you know, dealing with other people and meeting other people. And I'm not sure if you remember them specifically, but I found them, quite profound, where you were like, you talked about Liz actually, and like having a Liz moment, and that needing to like have a conversation and please, and then someone just sort of like walking away, and how that like affected you, and you started like really analyzing your relationships with other people and how you're interacting, and like your way in proceeding with those. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of that to me and everyone else in terms of like what that, I don't know if you even remember it.
I
That
so
transition
that
process.
so I might need a few more prompts, but that story was one of the stories was there was this girl named Elise,
Oh,
and
sorry, Elise. Yes.
yeah, which is a completely different person. But I remember I was at one
Yep.
of her shows, and Elise, when I knew her, was just like, if like spiritual enlightenment is truly knowing yourself, she
Hmm.
knew herself a lot better than I knew myself.
Hmm.
So when I was around her, she would just like, she was a quirky person, so she said things that were on her mind, and they they always just felt a bit strange to me. And
Hmm.
but like that's just who she was. She was just an authentically kind of weird person, and those weirdnesses made me always be like, I should be saying something different, or I should be, how can I make her like me? She's not liking me enough or something. She's not saying the right things that I know how to make people say to like me. And after this show one time, I went up to her and I just said, "Hey, Elise, I really enjoyed your show." And she's just like, "Thanks." And we stood there for like 3 seconds. And then she just turned and walked away from me. And I was like, what just happened? Like, if that were me in her shoes, I would be like, okay, I got to go talk to these people over here now. Like, or I got to
Yeah.
go pack up my stuff. It's like always making some excuse so this other person doesn't feel offended.
Didn't need to explain it.
But
Just
she was
kind
just
of did
like,
what
she just
yeah.
pieced out. And I was like, I like thought about that for a long time later. And I was just like, she has like so much like guts to do that. I was
Yeah.
just so much admiration to just be like, well, we're not talking and I don't want to be here anymore. So goodbye. And there was nothing
Just
rude about what she did. It was just like, I'm going somewhere else now.
yeah.
um, but about relationships and people in general, I'm not sure what to talk about next.
I mean, I feel like with relationships and people in general, there's plenty because, you know, for everyone, it's a bit different, right? And I'm curious to know a little bit more about what you were mentioning with like how you know you're gonna marry the wrong person kind of thing, because I think like a lot of people just get in, like I've seen now that I've lived as long as I have, and I've seen sort of different types of relationships happen, and like the different amount of work that people put into it. You know, it's had like two kind of effects on me. It's like, one, it seems exhausting. That's the first thing that comes into my mind. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to have successful relationships because it's hard enough having friendships with people, let
Mm-hmm.
alone like deeper relationships with like another person, because like, you know, no longer is the time there to just waste away and hang out with other people and play games and things. It's like there's so much happening in life that this is difficult to balance. But I've also noticed like, a lot of people who've had those like longer lasting relationships, you start to see like signs of struggle with them. And they're not like, when we talk about the you having like your own emotional intelligence and understanding who you are, like I think they got married to satisfy some sort of expectation or need, and then they've had families and now they have jobs, and now they're just like, to me from an outsider's perspective, they look stuck. And I feel bad because
Yeah.
like it's not that they're bad people. They're like great people who are like if you had a ship with an anchor, that would be one thing. But this is just like two anchors on the same chain, just one on each end, and they're both just you're like, oh, how did you both become anchors? Like you're dragging each other down. There's no flotation device here. And it's hard to watch. And I'm wondering if there's ways that we can help people to like figure out who they are so that they can like end up being with the same people, or not the same people, but the right people. Like one of
Mm.
my friends, Ryan, who occasionally helps and with sort of like the Facebook group and things that I do for self-improvement, mentioned it to me once. It's like his concept of surrounding yourself with like the 5 people that you want to emulate most in your life, so that you see the most positive qualities that you can kind of gain from. And if you find yourself having contact with people in that sort of like circle of 5 that are like dragging you down, or aren't like having sort of like mutually beneficial kind of like influences, like you should get away from those people, because you're becoming that sort of double anchor for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for me, it's just like, I'm wondering what your perspective is on how to find the right people in life and surround yourself with people who are going to allow yourself to grow emotionally as a person.
Um, there's 2 separate things I want to talk about. First, I'll answer the second question.
Mm-hmm.
Finding those 5 people. In my life, there have been 3 or 4 people who I have just like basically been in love with, or not like in love, I need to marry you, but just like I am so strongly attracted to you because you exhibit what, like I see how you interact with other people, and I just think
Mm-hmm.
like I want that for me. but like, why don't I have that? What are they doing that makes them so much better than me? And not to like think of it like I'm a piece of garbage, they're so great, but just like
Mhm.
I need these people to be my friends. And that's there's three, like, Phil.
Yeah.
Phil is one of those people.
It's hard not to like Phil. He's just so
Nobody
likable.
doesn't like Phil. And I'm trying to be a Phil, basically. But
Yeah.
but but they have been like my spiritual mentors. And I told them later in life, like, or
Mhm.
like I've said to other people before, like, I just really hope that when I meet the person who I feel I'm meant to be with, that I love them as much as I love you. Because like
Yeah.
it's like I don't expect you to like be my partner right now or something. I just
Yeah.
know that like because like they had a partner as well or something. And I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to break you up, which I think a lot of people do. They're like, I love you so much. Like you're the one for
Yeah.
me. And it's like it's because they see something in that person. But they're not like if this person loved you back,
Mhm.
they would tell you, right? They would express it,
Yeah.
they would show something. So if someone doesn't love you the way that you love them, then you got to just like grow up and be like, okay, I have to move on, even though that's really hard. I think you've probably
Yeah.
been through that before.
That's the thing I have difficulty with, honestly, because like I can say honestly that I think maybe 3 times in my life have I ever like felt like an attraction to another person that has been like so profound that like I can't ignore it kind of thing.
Mhm.
And that's what makes every other relationship feel hard, is because like quite honestly, like some people will call it a spark or whatever, but like that's missing. There's like the little bit of magic that like it's just like drawing is missing. Like it just feels like you're doing it because you should be, like
Mhm.
being alone is wrong, so you should find someone to be with, and then you're just wasting sort of time. But like the rarity of finding those people that are just like that, bring that little bit of magic into your life that you truly connect with, is incredibly difficult. And like my problem is when that's not like a mutual like we have a great relationship, but like I don't want to be with you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I feel very rejected,
Mm.
and it's very difficult for me, and I go through these horrible periods of like just like deep negative emotions, and like to the point where like I really try and push those people away, because it almost feels unbearable to even have them in your life now, because you feel like, you know even though you have this strong connection, it's not on the same level, so you're always going to be like sort of putting energy into this relationship, and you want to go like full bore with it, but it's not being reciprocated. It's not like a mutual kind of thing, and now you're just, again, are you preventing yourself now from finding something that will be a more reciprocative kind of relationship, and having to deal with that?
Mm.
That's my struggle.
So
I'm trying to be more aware of that and not push people away and be like, it's all right. But like for a long time in my life, I'm just like, okay, I don't need to like invest energy into this anymore. Relationship gone.
there's this thing that um since I've met Liz and like we're engaged now and like I'm not,
Mhm,
because I no longer am single, I'm able to
mhm,
see like what it's like having a partner versus a partner where you're like, this is my person. I'm spending my life with this person. I will continuously grow with this person, blah, blah, blah.
mhm,
Seeing single people, I can see what I was like when I was single. And
mm.
there's a lot of desperation,
So much.
especially as we're getting older, because when we meet new people, we have to prove, or we feel like we have to prove to them that we're likable. And I my first like couple years of like online dating, I
Mhm,
didn't struggle because like my MO as a type 7 Enneagram was like, I know how to make people like me. So I went on a bunch of
mhm.
dates and I was able to make people like me, but I never liked them back. So that was my problem.
Yeah.
But for other people, like I saw like when you message someone on Tinder, let's say,
Oh
um,
God. Tinder.
I hate it, but everyone
We're gonna
everyone was
avoid that.
everyone
That's
was
a whole other
trying
thing.
so hard to like be funny or to like
Yeah.
make their profiles like seem like a good person.
Yeah.
And but not like a good wholehearted person, but like, here's one of me fishing and here's me doing some sports. And like, that's what my profile looked like the first couple of years I was on Tinder,
Mm.
until I started like reading about the Enneagram. And then I completely changed everything to just being like, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking
Yeah.
for. This is what I value. And
Mhm.
when I talked with someone new, because it's hard to open up a conversation with like, hey, what do you value? Well, I guess you could do that. I would totally do that if I were single now. But the way I started conversations was saying, tell me something really weird about yourself. And
Yeah.
some people would be like, I remember one person said, I don't like broccoli. And I was like,
All right.
bye-bye. I was like, so the reason why I said that is because, bringing this idea to what you were saying before, I think the biggest thing about um, knowing who you are and being able to like approach relationships, friendships, loving relationships, is knowing who you are and being able to be vulnerable with that. And vulnerability is just like,
Mm.
it's the key to everything.
Yeah.
And like, if there's someone that you really care about, that you are like in love with, to
Mhm.
be able to say like, not like, I love you, please be with me, but being like, you are like, of all the people I've met, you are the person that inspires me because of
Yeah.
this. And then if this person rejects you, to be like, that's really disappointing for me, but not like, oh, this is the worst day of my life. And
Mm.
being able to like,
No Romeo and Juliet
because
scenarios.
when you have that like, so I bring this back to the story of myself and this other person who I loved. And
Mhm.
when I first, like, I loved her for a very long time, and then when I told her, I was like afraid to tell her, because I was like, we have this great friendship and I really don't want to ruin it, or
Yeah.
I have like these fears of being rejected. So I
People
just,
like me.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
We're out there.
which
It's awful.
which is when I said to them like, I want the person I meet to be as much like you as possible. Not like
Mhm.
you, but like, I want to be attracted to the person I meet as much as I'm attracted to you. And that was like, that, me being vulnerable, being like,
Mhm.
I'm telling you I love you. I know that you don't feel the same way, because I know you would have told me by now, and I don't
Mhm.
expect anything to change, but I just want you to know that I love
Yeah.
you this much. And like, that created the best friendship, because
Mm.
this person knew how deeply I cared about them, and knew that my intentions were not to try to like make them mine,
Yeah.
because I knew already that they weren't going to be mine.
Mhm.
Um, so
I had a
be,
thing I was going to comment on, but I forgot. So if you still have
I'll
more
just
you
keep
want to say,
talking.
go for it.
I'll just figure stuff out. So the idea of vulnerability and being able to like,
Oh,
back to the,
that's what it was about. If I might interject for a second,
okay, do it.
because you were mentioning like the ability to be vulnerable is very important and it's very key to things. And I think, that's another thing I want people to understand. Like if you're listening, is that being vulnerable is great if you have supportive people to be vulnerable to.
Hmm.
Like if you are keeping the people in your life who you constantly feel like you can't express things to, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because it's important to know that there are people, like I constantly think about people who are out there and they're struggling through, like whether it be depression or whatever, and they're saying like out loud like, oh, things are horrible, and they're doing their best to express how they're feeling, and people are just like, I don't want to deal with this person because they're a downer.
Hmm.
Like if you're surrounded by people who don't want to deal with you because you're a downer, like get new people.
Totally, totally. Like,
Yeah,
it's, you have
key.
to, like, one of the things, you, like, the version of me that you knew before you
Mhm.
went away and came back,
Yeah.
since you came back, I have trimmed my friend group substantially,
Oh yeah.
because this is one of the bigger points that I wanted to mention, was just that when other people, there's a few things here, when other people have like really visible um personality traits, to call it
Yeah.
that, ego things,
Mhm.
I find it really difficult to be around them now, because I'm spending my life trying, like, making it an active point to be aware of those things and to be vulnerable
Mhm.
with them. And when people, I see them being controlled by their own habits and they are completely unaware of it, it doesn't really feel like I'm talking to them. It feels like I'm talking to a version of them that has a specific goal in mind. And it might just be to be loved. And it's not like
Yeah.
these people aren't worthy of love. And it's not like I'll see them and be like, get away from me, you terrible, unenlightened person. It's like I'll talk to them and I'll like show them they're loved with my language, but it doesn't fulfill me. Like that's not who I want my close friends to be.
That's
So,
how I feel about filters. You know, like this might seem strange as a concept, but like how I kind of visualize this idea is like when people put filters on their photos, they're presenting themselves in a very specific way,
mhm,
and I don't feel like I'm seeing the real person, which is why I'm like I want people without filters, and that's whether or not it's Instagram filters or like in life relationship filters. Like I don't want you to pretend that you have to be nice. Like if you want to swear, swear, be like who you want to be kind of thing. Like just let me know who you are. Be the
yeah.
person that you want to be in our relationship.
And those filters are like they say a lot. It's basically saying like I don't like my body image. I don't think I'm beautiful. I don't think
Mhm.
I'm worthy of love, and maybe if I look a little bit prettier, people will like me a bit more.
Or
And
like I have to cover up my imperfections,
yeah,
which I think
the
like
same
our
thing.
imperfections are what we grow from, right? Like those are the things that like make us who we are. Because if we were all perfect, which doesn't exist, by the way, I'd like to always reinforce that you can't be perfect.
Of course.
We'd all be the same. The imperfections are what define us as people.
It's what make us interesting, really.
Like,
Like
yeah, if you
there
can't love your imperfections and the imperfections of the people around you and like learn to work and grow with them, like you're gonna have a bad time. I don't know how to put it in any other way than that.
there's a book by author Brene Brown,
So good.
Brene. Yeah. Called The Gifts of Imperfection. And
Mhm.
it's just like it's one of those books that I think every person on the world should read because like this journey into yourself, into your soul, into enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, it's like everything about it is the best. Like
Mhm.
I don't like I can use better words, but there's absolutely nothing negative about becoming a better person. Like all of your
No.
relationships will flourish. You will feel loved and be loved and cultivate better friendships and just be
Yeah.
you will have more mental energy to like pursue the things you love and to be enriched by them. Like it's profound
I
how
honestly think oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, just like the end result of all of these things we're talking about
Mhm.
is what I believe is the goal of life. And
Yeah.
what like once like for me, I read this book called Conversations with God that I
Mhm.
found to be really interesting. And basically, I read it right after the Enneagram. And
Mhm.
the way that it describes God is not like in terms of any religion. It just says
Mhm.
like when you are completely at peace with yourself, that's where you find God. Or like we are like in terms of like the
Mhm.
universe itself, which is made up of a whole bunch of particles, the same
Mhm.
particles that make up our bodies, that our bodies go back into the soil, they rain
Yeah.
down upon us, etc., etc. We're all the
We're all
same
star stuff.
stuff, right? And
Yeah.
as soon as we like realize that all of the problems in our lives are just like things that we developed from growing up and make an effort to like challenge those problems and become the best people that we can be,
Mhm.
that's where you start to like see all the things that are like you don't know what's wrong with your life until you either go through this journey, which is difficult to figure out where to start, I guess, or
Yeah.
unless someone else tells you that these
Mhm.
things are happening. And that's one of the hardest things to do, is to hear someone else like criticizing who you are as a person,
Yeah.
right? Like no one wants to hear that. Well, some people do, but that's people who are already on that journey. Like
Yeah.
me. Like I ask
Like if
people,
you're looking for criticism
yeah,
because
it's
you're
like
like, I want
please
to know
point
more
out my
about
character
myself.
flaws so I can like know. And like that's so this is another big idea that ties back to this other thing, which is
Mhm.
communication.
Yeah.
Communication is the foundation and what makes every relationship, whether it be your friends, your loved ones, your partners,
Yeah.
really, really work. And communication and vulnerability mixed together is what gives a relationship the ability to continue growing throughout the years. Because
Yeah.
if you're able to like be vulnerable, wait, what were the two things I just said?
Communication and vulnerability.
Thank you. If you're
Yep.
able to communicate, but you can't be vulnerable, then you'll just be talking about like sports and other things
Yeah.
that don't really matter for your own self. And if you can
Yeah.
only be vulnerable, but you don't know how to communicate it, that I
Yeah.
don't know how you're being vulnerable, but they
Yeah.
kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But so like you mentioned earlier about like people who are in relationships and it's just so sad to see them not
Yeah.
going anywhere. And like how do you like start off on the right foot? How do you meet people? How do you develop your friend groups? And one thing that I started practicing was like not only like being okay with being vulnerable. It's like, yeah, I can be vulnerable, sure, like with my therapist or something. But
Yeah.
not only can I be vulnerable, but I choose to dig into vulnerability. Like that's where I
Mhm.
go. I don't like, since I used to like crack jokes and stuff all the time, and
Yeah.
I find I don't much anymore. Like I still do sometimes because it's fun to laugh, obviously.
Yeah.
But I like when I meet new people or when I have a conversation with someone like a friend or something,
Mhm.
I all I want to know is like, what's up with your life? What has been happening that's been like bringing you
Yeah.
up, and what's been bringing you down? And whatever's bringing you down, I want to be emotionally supportive. I just want to say, man, that must be very difficult to be feeling what you're feeling. And that sentence is like, that's how to be a good friend, is to just be
Mhm.
able to use that sentence and change the words, and it never gets old. Like
Yeah.
it must be difficult to be going through what you're going through right now, because a lot of people don't know how to do that, and they just say,
I think that's
oh,
also straight out of a Brene Brown thing.
probably. Like
Yeah.
a lot of things I've learned are from her, but a
You
lot of
should
people.
check out Brene Brown if you haven't. I'm just going to throw that in there.
Absolutely. We'll leave a link in the description below.
Yeah. I probably will, to be honest with you. A
Please
couple of
do.
my favorites
Um,
and the books that you've recommended. So
and
make sure you get those.
a link to the Why You Will Marry the Wrong Person. It's a really good.
Yes. Yeah. There's going to be many. It's a link heavy description. This one's going to be.
What was the thing I just said before though?
Vulnerability is basically like sort of like your ability to ask people those questions and stuff is sort of like key to like having those relationships. And it
Yeah.
was something that I kind of wanted to touch on too a little bit as we're kind of coming up to the closing here as like a point, is that I think that, you know, like what you've said in terms of vulnerability and communication as being like two kind of key points to having positive relationships with anybody in your life is important, because I think what I want to challenge people to do, and like what we should all challenge ourselves to do more, is in the way that you've described, like now I go out seeking vulnerable talking points, right? Is that we need to find these things that we're uncomfortable with in ourselves, and we need to make a point of like on a daily basis challenging those things and like moving forward to say, okay, so like if these are things that I have difficulty expressing, like how am I going to express one part of that to a person today? How am I going to like find a person to talk to about this in a meaningful way that helps me grow from it, so that I no longer have to like feel afraid of it inside of me, kind of thing.
One of the things for me that I know is from my entire life growing up, but I'm uncomfortable with, but is eye contact when I'm talking to people. And there are people like Phil, for example, who just like stares at me and listens, and
You know, I'd
like,
not thought about it until now, but you're absolutely right.
and I love that. And I
Yeah.
love that so much that I want that for myself, and I recognize how much discomfort, like I as much as I can like positive, like I can like stare at someone and be like, you're uncomfortable, you shouldn't be looking at them, or like, is my face twitching or something like that. But that is something that, like, these things don't change overnight. They don't change by just like saying, I'm going to start looking people in the eyes now. It's like, the
Yeah.
reason I don't is because it makes me anxious, but I recognize how loved it makes someone feel when they really feel like you're listening to them and you're hearing them. And that is something that I want to improve in my own life. So I'm like, it's like a daily a daily challenge. Is just like every conversation I'm in, I'm like, can I stay
Some
connected
eye
even
contact.
when
Yeah.
I don't feel like I should be?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I struggle with it. And it's funny that I struggle with it because it really depends on the person. And, if there's people that I've known for a long time, like eye contact's easy. But like when it comes to meeting new people, I've been recently challenging myself to like uh, a little thing called like the rejection therapy, which is like, do things or meet people that you might possibly get like rejected by. So like, whether that's walking through the park and like striking up a conversation with like a random individual, like, hey, do you want to talk about, I don't know, how
Anything?
things are going? And it's like a total stranger that could be like, I don't know you, man. Like, I'm going to leave. Or, I've actually met some really interesting people through doing that. But like
Mm.
maintaining that eye contact can be difficult. But when you do it, it's such a better, like more fulfilling, like conversational experience and like, you know, opportunity to get to know a person where you just like, no, we're in this together right now and we're both like equally engaged and we're giving it our all.
The other thing with vulnerability and communication is empathy, and that there's a
Yeah.
huge lack of empathy, um, because of the way we were raised, et cetera, et cetera, blah blah blah. I keep saying the same things,
Hmm.
but all of us just need to practice empathy a bit more. Like, imagine what this person is feeling when I say anything, like,
Yeah.
or before I even say something. It's like, should I say this thing? How are they going to feel? Like,
Hmm.
Facebook is like a perfect example where everyone is just like spouting their own opinions, trying to be funny or trying to like rile other people up, insult other
Hmm.
people, and it's really depressing because like the most of the things I comment on Facebook, I'm just like trying to mediate other people. Like, I see someone
Yeah.
say something, I just say, this isn't helping anyone, and I'm not trying to, like, I'm being like, I already know that however this person hears me, they're going to feel like it's an attack.
Hmm.
So, like, just starting with like, hey, I understand you're frustrated. Um, I'm not trying to attack you, but just maybe look at yourself and how you're feeling right now. Because I know you feel like maybe you're winning this argument, which might make you think you're feeling good. But like, if you compare how you're feeling after winning this argument versus you sitting on a beach, like
Yeah.
nice and calm versus like, yeah, I won this argument. It's like, you don't
Yeah.
feel good. That's not what, like, good is what calm is. And we need to
Yeah.
like, patience
I
is just
honestly have
another
tried to
virtue
like
that we,
remove myself from most Facebook interactions because I get sucked into that trap sometimes. I'm
yeah.
just like, the injustice, I cannot stand for this. And I'm like, why am I like, what is the point of this? Like,
It's,
and not only is it a terrible medium for communication because like 70% of like all communication is like nonverbal body language, blah, 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 which doesn't exist on social media platforms. So you could be misinterpreting what other people are saying fairly easily. It's just like, don't get involved in that. But we are coming close to sort of our end time kind of thing here. So I think I just want to like end off with like, um, reaffirming the three things that you said that kind of stood out to me, which were like the vulnerability, communication, and empathy are kind of like your three. I'm going to call that the triforce of power
that's great.
for relationships. The triforce of successful relationships is vulnerability, communication, and empathy. So yeah, take that, Gannon. But yeah, if there's any just like a final point that you wanted to finish on, now's your kind of opportunity there. But I think that's like a really good like foundation for anyone who might be wondering like things that they could improve on.
The final point I want to leave with is about vulnerability again, and it's like, look at your own life, analyze every relationship, every connection that you make with other people, and think about how, like, oh, I'm gonna about to talk to this friend. How can I dig into vulnerability? And
Hmm.
like, for some people, that's just saying like, hey, how are you feeling? And when someone just responds with good, because that's a lot of people is like, oh, I don't do vulnerability, I just say good, and that ends
Yeah,
the conversation. And then like, not being okay with that being the end, being like, no, but really, like, tell me what's been happening in your life, tell me something that's been frustrating to you, and then just like wanting to go there, because making that a habit is going to it's going to open so many doors for yourself and for your ability to connect and feel what other people feel. And that's the core of making all of your relationships work.
Yeah. I'm all about goal setting, so I have to agree with that. Set a goal for yourself, whether it's once a day or in every sort of interaction you have, like once per day, to like ask people, those deeper questions and really sort of probe into that. And I think with that, we're going to end today's FlawedCast. So thank you very much, Danny Fong, for joining me today and having this great discussion about just relationships, spirituality, and how you can interact better with people in general and also get to know yourself and grow as a person. It's been a pleasure to have you, so thank you. Otherwise, that's going to be the end of the episode for now. So thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the FlawedCast.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Please like and subscribe with the link below.
I was doing the pentatonics thing. They've got like the bass singer who always goes, "Don't forget to subscribe." Except I have like the highest voice ever, so it doesn't. It's like the exact opposite. Don't forget to subscribe.
One day I'm gonna get you to like sing me out multi-track style.
I'll do it right now. I've got a loop pedal set up. No.
Oh my god. Okay, yeah, it can run slightly long for this.
All right. I don't have a loop pedal set up. I was joking. But I'll make up a theme song right now.
I'll take it.
It's the FlawedCast, where all of your problems can be made open. Be vulnerable and chat about your problems.
All right, everybody. On that beautiful note, it's the end of the episode. The FlawedCast.